At 0147 hours, operators at a launch site in Ukraine prepared to strike the Kirishi oil refinery, 1,000 kilometers away in Russia's Leningrad region. The single facility refined 6% of Russia's oil. In 3 hours, it would refine 0. At exactly 0200, the lead operator triggered the launch sequence from inside his moving vehicle. The first FP-1 accelerated down its rail, wings flexing under load, lifting off at 80 kilometers per hour. Every 15 seconds, another followed, banking northeast toward Russia. The operators were already 2 kilometers away, racing through forest roads with headlights off, guided by only night vision. Behind them, the empty launch site waited for the inevitable Russian counterstrike. Across Ukraine, the same desperate race repeated at dozens of locations. Farm fields in Sumy where operators launch from hidden bunkers. Highway rest stops near Chernihiv where trucks revealed hidden rails. Factory rooftops in Kharkiv where maintenance crews were actually drone teams. 361 drones launching in precisely timed sequence. But here's what made this coordination remarkable. The Kirishi package was actually launching last, despite having the furthest to fly. They'd burned more fuel flying faster at 200 kilometers per hour, while drones heading for closer targets cruised off efficiently at 150. This backward planning meant all 361 would arrive within the same 20-minute window. Moscow, Bryansk, Smolensk, Rostov, Kirishi. All would face attacks simultaneously. Russian air defense commanders would have to choose what to protect. What happened next would prove why their entire defense doctrine had been designed to fail. Russian Podlet radars in temporarily occupied Donetsk detected the launches within seconds. These radars can track a baseball at 60 kilometers. 35 drones climbing might as well have been fireworks on their screens. The data flowed instantly into Russia's integrated air defense network. Computers in Moscow began calculating intercept solutions. Fighter pilots across western Russia ran to their aircraft. But they were about to discover their entire defense doctrine had a fatal flaw. You see, Russia built their air defense to stop American B-2 bombers worth $2 billion. Their S-400 missiles cost $5 million each. Their fighters burned $10,000 of fuel per hour. But these FP-1 drones cost $50,000 to build. The economic math was breaking Russian doctrine. Fire a $5 million missile at a $50,000 drone, let it through, and risk a $1 billion refinery. Every option meant losing. Couple that with the fact that the FP-1 navigates using systems that can't be fooled. The primary receiver tracks both GPS and GLONASS satellites simultaneously. If American satellites say you're here, but Russian satellites say you're there, the drone knows someone's lying. But the clever part is the backup: terrain contour matching. The drone's radar altimeter constantly measures ground elevation, comparing it to stored topographic maps. Even with both satellite systems jammed, the drone reads the shape of the Earth itself to know exactly where it is. The engine powering this weapon? A Chinese two-stroke you can order online tonight for $500. It produces 6.5 horsepower burning regular gasoline, giving exactly 1,600 kilometers range. Ukraine didn't develop exotic military technology. They took hobby shop parts and turned them into strategic weapons. The warhead, though, was military grade. 80 kilograms of tetryl explosive that detonates at 7,900 meters per second, surrounded by steel balls that would punch through concrete at 200 meters. By 02:15, the strike packages had merged into one massive swarm heading east. Russian radar screens showed 361 contacts converging on dozens of targets. The question wasn't whether Russian would detect them. They already had. The question was whether they could stop them. At 02:45, the Kirishi package reached the Belarusian border. The main swarm of 326 drones continued eastward toward Moscow and other secondary targets. This was the critical moment. 35 drones peeled north, threading between Belarusian defenses and Russian interceptors. If detected now, isolated from the main swarm, they'd be easy prey. The package immediately split into what Ukraine calls a ladder formation. The Mugen 5 decoys climbed to 3,000 meters, deliberately broadcasting on known drone control frequencies. They wanted to be seen, tracked, and engaged. These modified commercial drones even carried radar reflectors, aluminum corner cubes that made them appear massive on radar screens. At $30,000 each, their job was to go out first and save the mission. The UJ-22s leveled at 1,500 meters, taking the middle tier. Some carried real 20-milligram warheads, others just ballast to match flight characteristics. Their role? Take missiles from Buk and Tor systems straight to the face, forcing the Russians to run out of ammunition. The FP-1 strikers dove to 50 meters, disappearing into what radar operators call ground clutter. At this altitude, radar beams bounce off of everything: trees, buildings, vehicles, creating electronic noise that hides small targets. Plus, the Earth's curvature helps. Radar travels in straight lines, but the planet curves away. At 50 meters altitude, a drone vanishes from ground radar beyond 30 kilometers. Physics itself was protecting them. But here's why this formation was genius. Each altitude band defeated a different Russian defense layer. High-altitude Mugen 5s would trigger the S-400s and S-300s, strategic systems designed for bombers. Middle-altitude UJ-22s would pull fire from tactical systems. The low FP-1s would slip through the gap between these layers. And vertical spacing meant no single missile could engage multiple drones. A missile climbing at 3,000 meters can't simultaneously hit something at 50 meters. Belarusian MiG-31 interceptors scrambled from Baranovichi Air Base. Their Zaslon M radars are among the most powerful ever fitted to fighters, designed to track B-52 bombers at 300 kilometers. But that power became a weakness. The radar uses narrow pencil beams optimized for high-altitude searches. Trying to find tiny drones at treetop level with a MiG-31 is like using a sniper scope to swat mosquitoes. The pilots locked on to the high Mugen 5s immediately, but doctrine required visual identification before engaging. By the time they confirmed hostile intent, the real strike package had opened a 40-kilometer gap. The decoys were working perfectly, pulling interceptors high while strikers slipped through low. But the drones had just entered the densest air defense network on Earth. Ahead waited the S-300 battery near Tikhvin with its infamous cheese grater radar. What the Ukrainians knew that the Russians didn't was that this unstoppable radar had exactly one weakness. At 0400, the package approached Tikhvin, 200 kilometers from Kirishi. The S-300's 9S-19M2 radar, the cheese grater, began tracking them. This radar seemed unbeatable. It frequency hops across the X-band 100 times per second. 8 gigahertz, 12, 10, 9, never the same frequency twice. You can't jam it because by the time you react, it's already moved. But Ukraine had discovered its fatal flaw during previous strikes. Every 10 seconds, the system must recalibrate its frequency hopping sequence. For exactly 500 milliseconds, it stops transmitting. Half a second of blindness every 10 seconds. If you knew when that happened, you could disappear. One Mugen 5 climbed to 5,000 meters, deliberately triggering the radar. The S-300 engaged immediately. A $3 million 9M82M missile against a $50,000 drone. But in the 2 seconds before impact, the doomed drone transmitted the radar's timing pattern to the swarm. Its destruction provided the synchronization data they desperately needed. 27 seconds later, when the radar entered its reset gap, the remaining drones dove to 10 meters altitude. For half a second, they were invisible. When the radar resumed, they'd vanished into ground clutter. The operators saw ghost returns, maybe birds, maybe atmospheric anomalies. Without solid tracks, they couldn't engage. The swarm had slipped through during the blindness window, but they just entered Russia's electronic warfare zone, where GPS itself would betray them. The Pol-21 system activated, using a technique called meakening, recording real GPS signals and rebroadcasting them with delays. The drone's receivers showed them over empty fields when they were actually over cities. 5 minutes of position data, all lies. But in the words of Monty Python, it was but a scratch. The FP-1 switched to backup navigation. Magnetic heading combined with counting power line crossings. Each major transmission line between the border and Kirishi was a waypoint, 7 lines total, following the Moscow-Petersburg energy corridor. The drones were literally navigating by counting infrastructure that couldn't move or be spoofed. 2 drones flew over an iron ore deposit that pulled their compasses 30 degrees off course. 3 more followed the wrong power lines toward Finland. But the lead drone's power line count matched expectations. It was on course for Kirishi. The package, now down to 24 drones, pressed on through thickening morning fog toward the refinery's glow on the horizon. At 0600, Kirishi's lights became visible, a glowing industrial city that never slept. 4 Panzer batteries protected it, positioned for overlapping coverage. The 20 remaining UJ-22s split into their 5 groups of 4, each group targeting a different Panzer. The operators watching their radar screens faced an impossible choice. Their systems could track all 20 drones, but each battery could only engage 4. Those 4 missiles would need 15 seconds to reach their targets. During those 15 seconds, they couldn't engage anything else without abandoning missiles already in flight. Ukraine had turned the Panzer's precision into its weakness. 16 missiles launched simultaneously, their rocket motors lighting up the pre-dawn sky like an artificial sunrise. The UJ-22 started evasive maneuvers, but against missiles pulling 30 G turns, physics favored the interceptors. 12 UJ-22s went down in spectacular fireballs, their sacrifice buying precious seconds. Because while those missiles flew their 15-second journeys, while the Panzers were blind to new threats, the FP-1 Strykers sprinted through the gap. By the time the missiles impacted, the Strykers were inside minimum range. The Panzers needed 45 seconds to reload. The FP-1s needed only 30 seconds to reach cannon range. The math favored the attackers. The Panzers switched to their twin 30mm cannons, firing A-head ammunition, shells containing 360 tungsten sub-projectiles. The fire control computer calculated where each drone would be when shells arrived, creating clouds along predicted flight paths. But Ukraine had programmed random altitude changes every 2 seconds. Up 10 meters, down 5, up 3, down 8. No pattern for the computer to learn. The predictive targeting was firing at where drones should be, not where they were. 3 FP-1s flew into tungsten clouds and disintegrated. Another caught the edge, half its wing gone but somehow still flying, the gyroscope compensating frantically. 6 FP-1s cleared the cannon envelope at 500 meters from the refinery. The Panzers couldn't express their guns any lower without hitting their own positions. They'd broken through the main defense, but the Russians had a very new, special toy that they had brought to play with. 3 survivors crossed the refinery perimeter at 0618, but they just entered the Derevatsia PVO's engagement zone. Russia's newest close-in weapon system that sat on a modified BMP-3 chassis near the main gate. Its 57mm autocannon already tracking the incoming drones. This wasn't just another anti-aircraft gun. It was specifically designed to stop drone swarms like this one. The PVO fires shells with programmable fuses. But here's what makes it lethal. A laser rangefinder measures exact distance to each target, then programs every shell as it leaves the barrel. Shell counts rotations in flight, detonating at precisely the calculated distance, not on impact, in front of the target. Each explosion spreads 200 tungsten balls in a 10-meter sphere. The drone flies into a wall of metal it never saw coming. The system's computer was already calculating a firing solution called barrage mode. It would create overlapping spheres of tungsten at different distances: 300 meters, 250 meters, 200 meters, 150 meters. A 3-dimensional grid that nothing could fly through. The gun barrel began to elevate, targeting the lead drone at 200 meters altitude. But the PVO's designers had built in a fatal safety protocol. Below 100 meters altitude, the tungsten spheres could hit the refinery, storage tanks would rupture, volatile chemicals would leak. The system, trying to protect the facility, could trigger the exact disaster it was meant to prevent. The safety lockout was hard-coded into the fire control computer. No manual override, even in combat. The PVO opened fire at 0618. The first shell detonated 200 meters from the lead drone. too far to cause damage, but close enough to reveal the pattern. The second shell exploded at 180 meters. The computer was walking its fire closer. The third would be perfect. The lead FP1 tried to dive, but its damage controls responded slowly. The third shell detonated 8 meters away. 200 tungsten balls expanded outward at 1,500 meters per second. The drone's plywood frame shredded instantly. Fuel tank punctured. Engine torn from its mounts. It cartwheeled through the air, spreading debris over the refinery. The second drone reached 120 meters altitude. The PVO's barrel tracked downward, following perfectly. At 110 meters, still firing. At 105 meters, one more shell left in the barrel. At 100 meters exactly, the system stopped. The barrel froze in position. The final shell detonated harmlessly above the diving drone. He could see them clearly, track them perfectly, but the system wouldn't fire. He tried manual override, denied. He tried switching to direct fire mode, locked out. The computer had decided protecting the refinery from friendly fire outweighed stopping 2 drones. Big mistake. At 0619, the first FP1 struck the CDU-100 junction exactly where intelligence indicated. 25 kilograms of tetrol detonated at 7,900 meters per second, creating 100 psi overpressure. The corroded supports failed instantly. Crude oil at 380 degrees Celsius and 30 atmospheres pressure erupted from ruptured lines. The superheated liquid hit air and vaporized, a fuel-air explosion that propagated through the entire complex. 10 seconds later, the second drone hit Tank 47's degraded seal. The accumulated vapors ignited instantly. The floating roof became a 50-ton projectile, launched 200 meters by expanding gases before crushing the administration building. 80,000 barrels of petroleum now had no cover, feeding an exponentially growing inferno that climbed toward the clouds. The CDU-100 failure cascaded through interconnected systems like dominoes designed to fall. The fractionator column, starved of feed, experienced catastrophic pressure drop. Liquid hydrocarbons at 380 degrees underwent instantaneous phase change. A BLEV, boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. The column itself, 40 meters tall, split at weld seams. The top section flew 800 meters like a giant missile. Secondary explosions ripped outward. The BLEV's shockwave punctured 6 storage tanks simultaneously. Emergency systems tried isolating sections, but the damage was too widespread. Pumps couldn't stop with downstream pressure gone. Valves couldn't close against backward flow. The sprinkler system had no pressure. Water mains severed by the first explosion. The Kirishi Refinery, 355,000 barrels per day. 6.4% of Russia's capacity was destroying itself from within. Satellite imagery confirmed what Russia denied for days. CDU-100 destroyed. Catalytic cracker destroyed. 6 months minimum before partial operations. Full capacity might never return. Russia claimed complete interception of all drones. The inferno, visible from space, told the truth. Bye for now.